welcome to this Photoshop training session. In this particular module we're going to look at correcting colour casts. Here we have a photograph that has been taken indoors during the day, however, but the flash on my camera decided to come on and fill in some of the areas where the camera wasn't happy with the light. Now there's quite an obvious yellow cast to this image, and we're going to look at three different ways of correcting this cast, and each of them has their own strengths and weaknesses really. Firstly, looking at my info palette on the right hand side of the screen, I'm going to take my eyedropper and I'm just going to move around the image looking at the particular CMYK values. So you can see here there's 34% yellow there, and on this tablecloth in the foreground, which I guess should be or probably was in reality near white, 28% yellow there. On the corner of this basket here, 35% yellow, rising to 53% over here, 49%, so on and so on. So there's a great deal of yellow in the image. Now, one particular way of correcting an image is just to remove the amount of yellow from it. So a simple technique is to go to the image menu and go to Adjustments and go to Selective Colour. I'm a great fan of Selective Colour, and what I want to do here is make sure you always have it in the absolute mode, which means it absolutely changes the values. I'm going to say in the yellow areas of the image, what I want to do is I want to reduce yellow. So if I then start to move the yellow slider, you can see how it's removing yellow from just obviously the yellow areas of the image. So if I now put my cursor, let's just move this over the screen, if I now put my cursor over this cloth in the foreground, you can see the before and after values. So look over here on the info palette and you can see before it was 30% yellow and it's now gone down to 26% yellow. And again, if I position my cursor over here, it was 45 and now it's 35. I'm just going to take a little bit more yellow out of it just to neutralize the colors a little bit more. So that's gone from 30 to 27, 30 to 26 there, 52 to 37 there. So a nice simple technique this. I'm going to click OK, and then in my history palette here is I'm going to take a snapshot of that, and I'm just going to double click the snapshot name and call this one Selective Colour. So we're going to compare all the three different versions. Returning to my original snapshot, so it reinstates the very yellow looking version now. So if I click between the two of them, you can see that you can spot quite a difference. Now returning to my original snapshot, the second technique I'm going to use is to go Image Menu, Adjustments and Levels. Levels is something that I use a great deal for changing the tonal range of images, but I also use it for changing colours within images, within the shadows, midtones and highlights. I want to correct the yellow in this image, and an easy way to work out colour correction is to write down CMY for cyan, magenta and yellow on a sheet of paper, and then directly underneath it is to write down RGB. You'll see that B is opposite Y, so blue is opposite yellow. So here I've got a yellow image, and if I click onto my colour channels, because this image is in RGB still, not in CMYK, is that if I click onto my colour channels, of course yellow isn't on the list, but I know that yellow is opposite blue. So if I choose the blue from here, so if I move the midtones to the right, you'll see that I'm increasing the amount of yellow. I'm going to hold down the Alt key, and a great little feature in Photoshop is that all cancel buttons in dialog boxes change to reset, which allows you to go back to where you originally started. Just change to the blue channel again. I'm going to drag the midtones to the left now, and watch the effect on the image as it now neutralizes the yellow cast. I'm just going to take a little bit more out, and something like that. So finally, if I click OK, now this time I'm going to add another snapshot, and double clicking the name of this snapshot, I'm going to call this one Levels. Let's just have a quick recap. That was the original image, that was the changed image after Selective Colour, and that was the changed image after Levels. Potentially gone just a touch too bluey on that one. That one's maybe a little warm, and this one's now just fractionally cold. I'm going to return back to the opening snapshot, which now looks even more yellow, and then I'm going to use my last correction system. This time, Image Menu, Adjustments and Curves. Now, I've worked with curves a lot over the years, a very powerful command system, curves, and they've improved it in the Photoshop CS3 version. It has a few extra possibilities of predefined curves from the top pop-up list here. The nice thing about curves is it works on a tone curve, and again is defaulted to RGB, which means effectively changing all 3 channels and doing them tonally. I'm going to select the blue channel. In the blue channel here, the basic idea here is that if I click into the middle of the curve here that represents the midpoint or the mid-tone of the image, if I drag the image up, you'll see that it adds blue, i.e. neutralizing yellow, and if I was to drag down, that it increases yellow. But of course I'm increasing yellow throughout the midtones. I could from here choose to increase the amount of blue in the shadows like this, or alternatively I could increase the amount of yellow in the shadows. I'm going to hold down the Alt key and again click Reset, as I did a little earlier. A nice feature of curves, and this works great if you're doing an image tonally too. I'm going to select blue from the pop-up menu, and then I'm going to click and keep my finger down. I've got the eyedropper tool, and where I keep my finger down is it then shows me a little circle along the curve to represent whereabouts I am tonally. So I'm interested in doing this little section of this basket here. So I now know that that is in the mid-tone, so I'm going to click there to set an anchor point, and then I'm going to drag that mid-tones up, and you can see how I'm then neutralizing those tones. If I look at my CMYK values over here, I can see that I've dropped from 54 to 44 and left the other values relatively the same. Now again, I can try to isolate other different areas. I can click and keep my finger down here, and I can see whereabouts it is tonally. So again, I'm going to set another little anchor point, and then I can just drag that up, and I know that I'm then removing even more yellow out of this highlight area in the foreground. So you can see, if you look at my values on my info palette, that I've gone from 28 to 18% yellow, whilst again leaving most of the other colours relatively unaffected. Back over here is that I could click and keep my finger down in these small shadow areas, and again the curve shows me roughly where they are, and I could then just choose to neutralize them a little bit more. I'm going to click OK, and then take my final snapshot, double click that name there and call it curves, and then I can go through and compare all 3 systems. So I can look at the original, which looks pretty awful, and then I can look at the selective colour change version, the levels version, which is a little brighter, a little bluer, and then the curves version, which is slightly more yellow. In fact, I probably could have gone a little bit further, but it certainly gives you a great deal of food for thoughts, and that's looking at the use of selective colour, levels and curves, 3 really excellent systems for changing colour casts.